The reason I started talking about the need for having a holistic plan B is the idea that every part of someone's plan works together because every part of your life has to work together. And so when I say you need a plan, I say you need to analyze your finances, where you're banking, where you're paying tax, where your companies are. You want to analyze your lifestyle, your residence, your citizenship, where you're living, how you want to live, what your citizenships are, which ones you want to keep, which ones you don't, which ones you want. And you have to analyze your investments, what you have now and what you want and where you want to be. And so I think that any kind of plan B that you create really needs to focus on two things. Not only does it need to be strategic, but it needs to have a human element to it. And that's something that I started talking about years ago, and people would make fun of me. I remember one guy told me once in the business early in the days of Nomad Capitalist, you're too emotional. And I said, everything that we're doing here, everything that we're talking about here is emotional. Because, how many people do I talk to that don't want to move to Puerto Rico? Americans who could reduce their taxes from 0 to 4%. They don't like the idea of living in Puerto Rico. And so even though that may be the best tax strategy, if I have to drag them kicking and screaming down to Puerto Rico, they're going to be miserable. And the tax savings don't matter. And so for that person, I think the plan B is rather to have second residences around the world, even if the taxes are a little bit higher for them. So any plan B that you create needs to have a couple of things. It needs to be done with all options in mind. It needs to be executed with great awareness of the overall plan and with everything being connected. And it needs to be maintained by the right people. And I think that if you're not considering all of those elements, that you're going to have a plan that doesn't work as cleanly as it should. Everything needs to work together. The investment property that you buy in another country, the rental income on that may be taxable where you live. And so how is that going to work? Is it going to create an adverse situation? The citizenship that you get, can either help or it can hurt. Residences the same way. So all the things that I mentioned have to work together. And the challenge that I see when people are trying to create a plan B, people go online and they do research and they'll type in, they've heard of the Portugal Golden Visa, for example. They'll type in Golden Visa, or they'll type in citizenship by investment. And so the challenge that some of the lawyers I work with and I discuss is most of what you're going to find, and especially what you find at the top of the ad-driven search results, is information from commissioned salesmen. So I recently took a trip to Turkey. And if you go to just the airport in Turkey, you'll see all kinds of real estate developers advertising their properties, and they're mentioning, get your Turkish citizenship. And it's true. If you buy property that appraises at 250,000 US dollars and that equivalent in Turkish lira, you qualify for Turkish citizenship. You don't really have to overpay. Other than some legal costs, it's not like other Caribbean citizenship programs where you are, sinking a bunch of money. The challenge, though, is if you look at those properties, they're often overpriced, they're in bad areas, and they're basically just trying to sell you on some story of why this property is worth $250,000, even though they just inflated the price from $180,000 to meet the criteria so they can sell it for citizenship. And that works for people around the world. These people rake in a lot of money. And then some of them come to me and offer me 10, 15, 20, even 25% commissions for selling their property or selling their investment options. I, on the other hand, as someone who has never been in the commission business, think that you want to create a holistic plan that solves your problem. Because if you want a second citizenship, your goal is not to have a Turkish passport. Your goal is not to have an Antigua citizenship. Or as I told people years ago when Paraguay was known as the fast, easy, and cheap destination for citizenship, I said, you don't need a Paraguay citizenship. What you want is freedom, freedom to travel, freedom to have a place to go, very important this year. You want freedom from high taxes potentially. You want options to have a place to escape, options to send your children to school, options to have the ability to work in. There's any number of different reasons because we are limited by our nationality. We are restricted by the places that we are born. And by adding new options to our residence citizenship portfolio, by moving our business overseas, we can lower our taxes. All these things work, but they don't work in a vacuum. And so what so many people want to do when you're seeking a plan B is to sell you a shiny object. The guy in Turkey who sells the property that pays a 15% commission does not know how you will need to handle the taxes on the rental income that you're paying. He may know in Turkey, but he doesn't know where you live. How does it work with foreign tax credits and tax treaties, and how do you square that with the US or Canada or Australia or wherever it is that you live? How do you make sure you're not double taxed? How do you make sure you're not going to become in violation of the tax laws where you live by not reporting it? And what if you open a bank account in Turkey to collect that rental income? How does that bank account have to be reported? That guy doesn't really know or care because he's in the business of doing one thing. That's selling property and then passing you off to a lawyer to get your citizenship done. And that's fine. And I've been selling things door to door since I was 8 years old. I think that there is not enough focus in much of today's business on the virtues of salesmanship when done honestly. I also think if you're putting up ads and selling people $180,000 properties for $250,000, that's not ethical. Nor is it helping you, the consumer, because if you're looking for a plan B, you have to analyze every single option. And I think this is a thing that people often miss, where they want to do it themselves and they go out and they find something and they assume that a property for sale that qualifies for citizenship or qualifies for residence or qualifies for a golden visa is worth what it's worth. People have come to Georgia, for example, where I have a home, time and time again, and I found a great deal. I'll show them a bunch of properties that I like that are great deals. Maybe they need some work, and so people don't want to see the value after the work is done, and they'll go and find something from a developer. I negotiated a great deal, and usually they're paying 10 or 20% too much. People who want to move to Portugal with us or other countries, they'll often find properties online to rent that are double the price that you'd find when you work with a local agent who speaks the local language, and you're looking at properties online in the local language. And so creating a plan B could be a place to go, second residence, could be a second home, could be a second passport, perhaps all of the above, could be an offshore bank account overseas. And I think that, again, all these things need to work together along with where it is that you are living. And far too often I'm having people come to me now and saying, I need to get a second citizenship for my wife and I so we can both renounce U.S. citizenship and save on taxes. Well, if only one person owns a business, then only one person needs to renounce, just as an example. And that person will come to me and say, I heard that the best passport was Grenada, because that's what I read on someone's website. And then I say, well, hold on a second. Grenada is $50,000 more than you need to spend. And then if we don't need to add your wife, we can save another $30,000. And then, by the way, didn't someone tell you that you're actually eligible for citizenship in this country? It might take an extra couple months, but you'll save yourself $100,000 plus fees, And so that's what nobody's doing in this industry, by and large, is nobody's going through all the different options and saying, hey, there's 5 different ways you can get citizenship. There's fast, there's slow, there's cheap, there's expensive. Maybe we can put 1 or 2 or 3 of them together, right? If you want a passport that gets you into the United States and you want a passport now, maybe you get a cheap passport now and then you work towards a good passport through a golden visa program and you save yourself money rather than spending $1 million in Malta. And so you can't fall for the shiny object trap when you're going and creating your offshore plan B, because so many people, now I think we've got a pretty nice looking website. People have complimented nomadcapitalist.com, but what we've focused on is creating about 2,000 articles, more than 1,000 videos on YouTube to educate people, provide my real life experiences as a consumer, because I don't want to get ripped off either. I want to get the best deals. I want to be able to sell my property later for what I paid for it, or hopefully more, and not lose a bunch of money because I thought I was getting a good deal on my citizenship. And so I think we've got a nice looking website, but so many of these slick websites that don't do that kind of consumer advocacy are all about, how do I make a commission? How do I sell someone this one thing, regardless of how that affects their overall puzzle? Having Turkish citizenship in a vacuum, I suppose, or having Antigua citizenship in a vacuum, I suppose, is better than having nothing, because I do believe that being a dual citizen is better than not being a dual citizen. But if you don't know how that's going to help you, if you don't have a strategic and a human plan of how you're going to use that when the things that you're worried about happen, then you don't really have a plan. That's what we've spent years trying to do at Nomad Capitalist. We've worked with hundreds of people to accomplish that, from people making several $100,000 a year up to people who are centimillionaires and even billionaires. And so this is what I've learned from experience. These are the things that we talk about here on our channel. It's how to not chase shiny objects, how to make it all work together. So this is your reminder. If you are, like so many people this year, trying to build your plan B, trying to figure out, how do I make sure my family's safe? How do I protect myself from future tax increases as politicians proposed wealth taxes and UBI and new estate taxes and how do I keep my wealth intact? How do I keep my family safe? Where do I go where we can live a healthy life and be free and not have so many regulations? Then those things all need to be considered. One little book in the form of a passport will not solve your problem. One bank account won't solve your problem. One residence from a country you've never been to and know nothing about won't on a human level solve your problem. And choosing a plan that either feels good on a human level but doesn't accomplish much, or is entirely strategic but you'll never use, neither of those are going to work. And nothing's going to work if you don't know how to maintain it and stay in compliance and stay one step ahead. So those are the things that I want you to consider when you're planning your plan B. This is your reminder to not chase shiny objects. How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.